Have you ever stopped and really wondered what's in your food? I mean, beyond what's on the nutrition label? Today, we're going to dive into a fascinating natural fiber that might just be able to trap and remove some of those invisible toxins before your body even has a chance to absorb them. So, is it a toxin's worst enemy? Let's find out.
It's a question a lot of us ask ourselves, right? We all try to eat clean, but the reality is our food supply is constantly being challenged by contaminants from the environment, from processing, even from the packaging it comes in. So, what exactly are we up against? Well, it turns out it's a quiet but pretty widespread problem. We're talking about a kind of silent contamination from sources that are honestly incredibly hard to avoid in our modern world. What we end up with is this sort of cocktail of unwanted guests in our food. You've got things like mycotoxins. Those are fungal toxins that can grow on crops like corn and peanuts. Then there are heavy metals like mercury and arsenic from pollution. Of course, there are pesticide residues. And we even have to think about chemicals like BPA that can literally seep into our food from plastic containers. This isn't just some far-off risk. It's a part of our daily exposure. And just how big of an issue is this? Well, according to the Food and Agriculture Organization, mycotoxins alone contaminate at least 25% of the world's cereal crops. And, some reports suggest that number could actually be way, way higher. That's a massive chunk of our global food supply.
But what if nature already has a defense mechanism? Let's pivot from the problem to a really powerful contender in the fight against these toxins, a special kind of fiber called beta-glucan.
So, what is this stuff? Put simply, beta-glucan is just a type of soluble fiber. It's a completely natural, long-chain molecule made up of glucose units, and it's a really important building block in the cell walls of a whole bunch of different organisms. And the great thing is, this isn't some super rare, exotic compound you have to go hunting for. Beta-glucan is found in really common things, like baker's yeast, in healthy foods we love, like shiitake mushrooms and oats, and even in certain kinds of bacteria and seaweed. The point is, it's been a part of our diet for a very, very long time.
Okay, so how in the world does a simple fiber pull this off? Well, the science behind it is actually pretty cool, and it all comes down to a process called binding. Let's take a closer look at how it works.
Now, the key term here is adsorption. And notice I'm saying that with a D, adsorption. It's different from absorption. Absorption is when something gets taken inside something else. Adsorption, on the other hand, is when molecules just stick to the surface. The toxin basically latches onto the outside of the fiber. Honestly, the best way to picture this is to think of it like molecular Velcro. The beta-glucan fiber is like one side of the Velcro strip, and the toxins are like those little fuzzy bits that get stuck to it as they're passing through our digestive system.
So what's actually making this Velcro stick? It's not hooks and loops, obviously. It's all about weak chemical forces. See, the surface of the beta-glucan molecule is covered with these things called functional groups, and these groups form weak connections, like hydrogen bonds and van der Waals forces, with toxin molecules, like the mycotoxin aflatoxin. Now, each individual bond is super weak, but there are so many of them that they all add up, creating a strong enough pull to make the toxin stick as they go by.
It's a really elegant theory, right? But does it actually work in practice? Let's dig into the evidence, and we'll start in the controlled setting of a lab. In a lab, the results can be just incredible. I mean, we are talking about removal rates of nearly 97%. That's huge.
So to give that number some context, one in vitro study, so a study in a lab setting, found that a specific yeast, Saccharomyces cerevisiae boulardii, removed almost all of the aflatoxin M1 from a milk sample. This just shows its massive potential under these perfect, ideal conditions.
Okay, so that's what happens in a test tube. But what about when we move up to animal studies? Well, the evidence there is still really promising. For instance, in mice, yeast-derived beta-glucan was shown to lower the toxicity of mercury and help get their immune function back on track. In broiler chickens, it gave them protection against the nasty effects of aflatoxin, and in piglets that were exposed to something called vomitoxin, it helped restore their gut health.
Right. This is the million-dollar question, isn't it? The lab results are great, the animal results are encouraging, but does this molecular Velcro actually work to clean house when people, eat it?
So one recent human trial took a look at this. They focused on oat beta-glucan and its effect on what we call forever chemicals, or PFAS. One group drank a beverage with beta-glucan from oats, and the other control group had a similar drink made from rice. Now here's what's interesting. Total PFAS levels in the blood did go down in both groups. But, and this is the critical part,
there was no statistically significant difference between the two groups. This is the challenge with human studies. The drop might have been due to other things. It just means this one study couldn't prove that the beta-glucan was the specific reason for the drop, which really just highlights how complex human biology is.
So, after looking at the lab, the animals, and the human evidence, what's the bottom line here? Where do we land on all of this? Let's try to put it all together.
Okay, here's what we can say with a good amount of confidence. First, the physical structure of beta-glucan absolutely allows it to grab onto or absorb certain toxins. Second, the evidence for this is super strong in lab models and looks pretty good in animal studies, but it's also important to know that this binding isn't necessarily permanent. It can be reversible. And maybe, most importantly, clear direct proof that just eating beta-glucan has a major detox effect in humans, well, that's still an emerging field of science.
So where does that leave us? We've got this natural, safe, abundant fiber that has a proven ability to trap toxins, at least in a lab. And while that direct human evidence is still playing catch-up, you can't deny the potential. And that brings us to a really fascinating final question. Could harnessing simple biological tools, like beta-glucan, be a key part of the future of food safety? It's definitely something to chew on.